Welcome to the Dear Rockstar podcast. I'm excited to get to be here today with Gregg Pollack, who is the founder of Code School, Envy Labs, and Starter Studio. But mostly, other than being a founder, he's just really super cool. Because sometimes people that found too many things, they become uncool, but not you.
No, you're super cool.
So I'm psyched you're with us.
Appreciate you having me
today. And for people that don't know about Code School, Envy Labs, you want to give us a little overview?
Sure. So I started running a successful consultancy about 8 years ago now, building web applications, and that was Envy Labs. And then one way we got business for the consultancy was all of my teaching programmers different technologies online. And that's how we got consulting business. And that did so well, we decided to try to monetize that into a product, which became Code School, which now is a subscription service where programmers can keep up to date with the latest technologies by learning online for $29 a month.
Yeah, and I love how humble you are. How many people subscribe to this?
Oh, Code School has over 30,000 monthly subscribers, but we have a lot of free content. So there's been over 1.5 million developers that have learned on our platform.
Wow, and one thing I love about your Code School story, did your consultancy kind of come out of a little bit of a learning? You were doing something that was, some of us call these face plants. Maybe you might call it a learning.
Well, sure. I can definitely point to 2 other failures in my career where I've tried to do a startup and it didn't work out. And the consultancy was something that did work, being able to create my own consultancy where creating web applications for other people.
Yep. So one of the cool things about you is you've exited. Mm-hmm. So many people want to sell their company. So you've sold Code School, but you're still at Code School. Tell us about that.
Right. So I don't feel like I ever said to myself, I want to create a startup. No, it starts with like, oh, I can create a product and people want it. Mm-hmm. And nor did I ever think, oh, I'm building this to sell it. Like that was never a goal, right? It was just, I found it pretty rewarding that I got to create content and people would love it. And then I, was able to monetize it and I really love creating good work cultures. That also kind of came as something that's just true to me that I probably don't value as much as I should. So back in 2014, Code School had been growing and we were about to cross that $5 million in annual revenue mark. And I got some good advice for, we're at this point where what got us here might not get us further. And we were growing, very, very slow and steady. There was never any inflection point. So we realized we could either keep growing slow and steady and hopefully no one outcompetes us. We could go and get some strategic investment. So go find an investor that could also help us continue to grow because we knew we were missing some leadership. Nobody there had any idea how to scale from, 5 million in revenue to 50 million in revenue.
Right.
Or we could entertain an acquisition. And somebody said, like, now's the right time. Now's the right time for you to entertain the acquisition because when you get past that so at 5 million in revenue, right? You might look at that and go, okay, 10 times that is 50 million valuation. That's probably around we would get valued if we went and got investment. Not necessarily what you can get acquired for, which is a different thing.
Absolutely.
But a piece of advice that was really good advice was that once your company gets past 50 million in valuation, the number of companies that can acquire you possibly go down because not too many companies have that kind of revenue.
Right.
And also the number of companies you'd actually want to join, that you'd actually want to get acquired by, also go down because it's those bigger companies that do have that cash that are more likely to acquire you and do bad things to your company, like lay people off, take your IP, sell it off, do whatever.
Right.
So it was a great experience getting to look and think about what are companies out there that we would like to join, that have complementary products. And so I reached out and had some really great experiences where I got to meet with executive teams from other companies. They flew to us. They got to know how we do our thing, kind of validated.
Like company dating.
Yes,
almost.
That's exactly right. Their executive team comes out, and it was extremely validating because they would come out, they would see how we did stuff, and they'd be like, wow, this is great. Your team is really talented. How you do this is really good. And we went, oh, I guess we know what we're doing, right? Because there was no validation up until then. And then,
Other than 5 million in sales and, a lot of subscribers. But for the founder, I think it's interesting, right? Like, it just feels like natural. But
Right.
now another company is saying, there's something here.
right. And then also going to their companies and getting to see from the executive level how their companies function and seeing their strengths and their weaknesses and learning more about them. Because some of the companies we went and we visited, we had like so much respect for, like, oh my gosh, these guys are amazing. We would love to work for them. And then we went there and we realized, wait a second, underneath the executive team, there's a lack of talent. We're like, they have a really hard time retaining some top players, but their executive team's amazing.
Right.
So it was a great experience. So we went through a couple different companies, got some offers that were too low, and then finally we're introduced to a company, Pluralsight, and going there to their company and walking around, we were like, wait, this feels just like us. This company cares about their people like we care about their people, and they have the same sort of creative environment. And, I can see enjoying working for these people. And that just on top of them having a product that fits really strategically with us, and them having a future where our product can become a key part of their future.
Of their value proposition.
Right. And they were probably, if we would have taken the investment route, maybe we would have been where they are, like 5 years from now.
Right.
So they were earlier. They, much like us, started out profitable, much like us, started out without a seed investment of any sort. So because of that, they were able to get really good investors along the way. They were able to be really picky about their investors.
Right.
And get deals that allowed them to retain a lot of control, which was great. And of course, it helped that me and the CEO always seemed to see very eye to eye. If there's
Was that a values thing, a vision thing, a culture?
Yeah, all the above. We're just very similar people as far as innovative, but yet we feel a great deal of duty to serve the people that work for us. Yeah. And so whenever there's so many things about the way they handled the acquisition that were like best case scenario that I had never heard of.
Yeah.
And now things have worked out really well. Code School is still steaming along like it always has. I'm still leading it. I still have an impact there. And now we have some great oversight that I think I never had. Like, we never had a board of advisors. So now it really feels like Pluralsight, they're serving as our board of advisors, but yet still allowing us to shape our culture and continue to do what we love.
So it sounds like an ideal, almost like acquisition nirvana or something, like accidentally, or not accidentally, but the due process. Something you said earlier that I want you to go back to is, I've always had the sense that you understood culture in a deep way, like you just get people, and you talked about your sweet spot. Was your sweet spot always building things?
No. Building things.
Like making things, like you said, you started this product. When you started the product, you wanted to build something, right? And then you realized that you liked people too.
So it comes from two things. That's two things. One is I love taking complex technical things and explaining them better than other people can. If there's one thing in this world that I feel like I can confidently say I do better than most people,
yes,
it's teaching technology, right? Complex technology. And so when I do that and I put that out into the world, I realized years ago that I can do that better than most people, and I get back lots of feedback, and it feels really good. So as there's that, combined with, I think, having very negative work experiences out of school and never having a good mentor, and getting to the point where I kind of really enjoy hiring people, and I also really enjoy asking the question. I mean, NV Labs started with me emailing a few people and saying, look at all these other consulting companies that are popping up and how cool they are. What would it look like to create the optimal work environment, do you guys think? Right?
So you did like customer discovery to your potential team almost.
Well, yeah, because I wanted to know what it would look like to create that optimal work environment. And that's where the whole thing started, was us figuring that out. Okay, well, we only want to work in the office maybe 3 days a week, and we want to have good traditions. Maybe we do lunch every Sunday, every Friday, and we want to go to conferences, and sort of figuring that out along the way to create, the best place for developers to work.
You've done some really cool things, but for those of us that haven't been inside your culture, we haven't been lucky enough to be your employees, what are some of the things that you started by going out and asking, right, these elements? Where did you land on what became really vital to create the work culture that you and your team wanted?
A little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I think it all starts with, putting people first, right? And so, I would always tell people, like, what code school, back then it was NV Labs.
Right.
And, I would say, our goals for the company were twofold. One, to create the best work environment for developers, and two, figure out the most honest and transparent way to do consulting work. And when I would talk to clients, I'd reverse the two. The first most important thing is to create the most honest and transparent way to do consulting, and the second is the people, right? Because that's what you want to hear if you're a client. But in reality, it was always kind of more important to me to create an environment where people feel safe, where people feel they can trust the people they're working with, and an environment where people have fun working. You spend so much of your life working. Why can't it be in a place that you feel like it's your family and your friends? So the work family we have today at Code School is unreal.
Wow. Having
directors that are, continuously doing one-on-ones with their team so everybody feels listened to. We don't really have a strict vacation policy. We just, take time when you need it. There's not any PTO, right?
Right.
We do things like betterment, we call it. So once a month we set aside a day where it's your job to work on something that makes you better. That could be a side project, could be reading, that could be taking an online class. We encourage people to go to one local conference, one remote conference a year. What else? There's a ton of little things.
Wow.
People can work from home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. No one wants to feel like they have to go into the office 5 days a week. We do lunches on Fridays where we bring in lunch for the team, and that allows people to sort of, to socialize,
have
that
community.
Social dynamic. We have a team event once a month that's always a lot of fun. This last month we had a casino night, game-sino night, where it's a +1 event, so you could bring in your spouse and really just have a lot of fun. We have lots of healthy groups of people that hang out during the week. They will go out to dinner, go out to lunch, so,
and
friendships are made.
And then it becomes a work family, right?
Yeah, it's a work family.
That's a radical, putting those two words together is not what some of us would say about our past places we've worked, but to be able to say that, like you almost gave us a recipe, like it's a lot of things that add up, right?
And it all starts with one-on-ones. Like if there's one thing that if you're not doing one-on-ones, it's only a matter of time before your most talented people leave.
Talk to me more about that. Why and what does a good one-on-one look like?
So, I think that the worst possible scenario, what's going to make someone leave is when they don't feel listened to, right? So one-on-ones is that opportunity for you to listen, right? And I think all the directors that do one-on-ones with the team that we have, they know that. One-on-ones is your opportunity to check in. How are you enjoying what you're doing? What would you like to be doing? What would you like to be learning? How can I help you? How are you doing personally? What's going on, right? And it's about asking questions. It's about genuinely caring, because you can't just ask questions and not care, right? And it's about active listening and being comfortable with blank space, right?
Well, being courageous enough to get in that meeting that you might, as a director, hear something you don't want to hear.
Oh, yeah. And, the most important question I tell people is, like, if there's no other, the question to ask. So you ask, is there anything you think I should know? And then you wait, right? I tell the directors, count to 10, right? And just leave it there. Be comfortable with just asking a question and just sitting patiently. Because if you do that, it gives people an opportunity to think, right? And then it's incredible sometimes what comes out of people's mouths, right?
Because like the truth, maybe, right?
It could be simply, well, it's been hard to focus because, my pet died last week, right? It could be something like that. Or it could be, you should probably know Jim's stealing from us, right? It could be whatever, but just by putting it out there and giving that blank space, you give people a chance to think and speak up.
So a big part of your value proposition was just the culture you did with people. You said, did you have great mentors? Did you happen upon this? How did you get here?
How did I get here?
With knowing how to be such a good leader.
I wish I could point to someone in particular. I guess the one thing that I guess leg up that I had was having parents that supported me through my failures. Just because there was multiple times where, I would have a startup idea while I'd be working full-time for somebody else and be working in my spare time, and we'd get to the point where I kind of wanted to try it, and I'd call up my parents and say, hey, I think I want to try to work on this full-time and turn this into a business. Do you mind supporting me? And of course, this is when I, was younger, less mouths to feed. So I could live off of, $2,000 a month.
Right.
And luckily my parents would say, okay, go ahead, right? We'll support you. And it was very open, and it wasn't set by a deadline. It wasn't like, okay, it's going to be a loan. It was just very open and go ahead, do your thing. And I feel like that gave me the opportunity to try things and fail.
What an amazing gift. It sounds kind of also like your vacation policy at your company. But, sometimes we don't know what's been nurtured into us. Like, wow, right?
And I think, I talked to my father. I definitely went back to him and, and thanked him for that. And he responded, he's like, I kind of knew that allowing you to do that, even if you were going to fail, would probably be the best education that money could buy.
Like, right?
Right.
So true. So a big part of like what you've created there is this, it's two sides, right? The client can be happy and the employees and the team can be miserable, or you can create such an incredible culture that it drives.
Right. And I think a lot of that too, I had some pretty traumatic things happen to me in college that made me feel very stigmatized, like a bit of an outcast, and I think and not safe, right? So I think because of that, it matters a great deal to me that any sort of work environment feels safe, that people feel like they can be themselves.
I think that's an interesting word. You use safe a lot. What has to happen for a work environment to be safe? And then what do we have to do as leaders and founders to do that?
Well, like I said, I think the biggest thing is listening to people and being perceptive of people and making sure that if somebody doesn't feel safe, or if somebody gets defensive, or if somebody feels singled out, that those sort of situations are immediately dealt with and immediately identified, just because there's a certain standard of the way we treat the people of the company, and it's we naturally demand that, and everybody on my director team in the company just feels so strongly that we create a safe space for people to work and to be themselves and to be collaborative. When you have that sort of negative work environment, people make choices based on fear.
Right.
Right? And that's the last thing you want. You want people to be collaborative.
And abundant. So I think the other really cool thing about your experience is you founded Starter Studio. And so you've had this experience. Explain a little what Starter Studio is, but then I want to get in and have you tell us what you're learning on helping startups, on helping so many startups.
Oh, certainly. So Starter Studio just developed from having extra space in our office for startups. And I started to catch wind of all of these tech accelerators popping up all over the country and started wondering what would it be like to run something like that here. Got together with some really smart people and did our customer validation and talked to other accelerators to figure out how we could put together a 3-month program. And what came out of it was Starter Studio, which is kind of unique compared to other accelerators, every year I thought we would become more traditional, meaning we would raise money and give them money in exchange for equity and try to help them raise more money. And we never end up doing that. I'm really happy we did, because that allows us, because we don't take equity, we just, get money from grants and sponsors, and just give them free mentorship for 3 months and free education and free desk space for 3 months, the big demo day at the end. And because of that, we can care a lot more about the individual entrepreneur and less...
Because you don't have this conflict of also being an investor now,
Right.
right? That line.
Right. So if they want to create a lifestyle business or a nonprofit, we can empower them to do so. We don't have to care about getting our money back.
Yeah. And so it's 12, 14, how many weeks is they...
It's a 3-month accelerator with a demo day at the end, and we just bring them through a little bit of curriculum at the start, and then the first month is all about customer validation, second month is all about execution, and the third month is about refining and sometimes pivoting, and then getting ready for demo day.
Talk to us a little bit about what you've learned, like being a spectator in terms of watching multiple people working through startup. Mm-hmm. What are you learning about just the practice of startup and early stage startup that would be helpful to others?
Well, nobody does enough customer validation.
Underscore. And when you say customer validation, what?
Right.
Define customer validation.
Well, it just means taking the time to make sure you're building the right thing, right? So that's mainly why my first 2 startups failed, is that I thought if I build it, they will come. And I didn't spend nearly as much time doing sales and marketing, right? That's the other thing that people don't get, is that as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a company, from day one, you should be spending half your time doing sales and marketing, right? And so that's where I went wrong. And part of that sales and marketing is doing the customer validation too. A lot of developers get into this mindset, especially if it's technical founders, right, where they think, oh, I got to build it first. I can't start selling it until I build it.
Yeah.
And that's just a lie.
Right.
You can talk to customers and go and see. Don't go to customers, number one, and tell them what your product is and ask them if they want it.
Right.
Right. Go to customers and that you think you have a product for, and ask them what their biggest problems are.
Yeah.
Right? Ask them what their biggest problems are in their business. Hopefully in their top 3, one of the problems are what you want to solve. If not, you might want to consider pivoting. Right? Yeah. And then figure out how much they would maybe want to pay for something like that. Right? And so you can get them on board at that early stage before you even build something. You can really discover what they want and how they want it and how much they're willing to pay for it, so you can validate if your idea is even worth going after.
With customer discovery and early inquiry on pricing, talk to me more about how do you have your early stage entrepreneurs do the pricing? How do they validate that?
Right. Well, I think there's a couple different stages to sort of the customer interview. I stress there's lots of good material out there to learn how to do customer interviews appropriately and successfully.
Yeah,
and that's
but we're
important.
talking about the Gregg Pollack divine ahas.
I don't know if I have any of that.
Yeah, that's because you're humble. You have some.
I honestly haven't done too much of that. We said I think so, but it's about figuring out what their problems are. It's about asking them, okay, if you had a solution to this problem that worked in this sort of way, how much would that be worth to you? Yeah. Right? So getting them to really think through, okay, you can work through it with them. Okay, so how much does this cost you now? Okay, so if you do 1,000 of these at this price and you had a tool that allowed you to do them at this price, how much money would you save? Okay, so you're saying that you could save $10,000 a month. That's $10,000 more profit you could be making. How much would you be willing to pay for a solution that saved you $10,000? Maybe $2,000 a month, right? And so a lot of entrepreneurs, they undervalue their products because they don't take the time to really think about, how much money they're making other people, and then explaining that to their potential customers in a way that shows them the value.
Yeah. So we don't do enough validation. We don't find out kind of the true monetary value. What else aren't we doing enough?
Bringing the customers, the potential customers, along for the ride.
What does that look like?
So a lot of people don't realize, if you can get these customers interested in what you're going to build.
Right. It's not built yet.
Right. The closer you can bring them to your team as you build them, the more of advocates they will become, the more long-term customers they're going to become, the more they're going to be forgiving when you give them a beta product that breaks half the time, right? So it's almost like you want to treat them like investors. If you treat your customers, your future customers, like investors, and you're talking with them and you're showing them prototypes, and you bring back to them initial designs, right? Would you mind looking, okay, is this what it would look like? And show me how you would click to get here and how you would do it and what's wrong.
Constant feedback, like putting the MVP, whatever you're right in front of them.
And you'll really be surprised, like how, if it's a problem you're solving for them, they're probably willing to give you, 10 to 20 free hours of their time, per year or whatever, to help you build a product that they're going to pay you for, right? So if you play that right, if you have a B2B product that, someone's going to pay you $2,000 a month for,
right,
you can go fishing for maybe you put out 100 emails there, and maybe you narrow that down to 20, and you get it down to 10 in your beta. So you've got 10 customers, if you do it right, they could start paying for your product day one. Right.
Because they were so close to us, and they were actually on the design development team.
And so that's maybe potentially $20,000 a month that you make as soon as it gets out there. The other thing that you see, though, even startups that follow this philosophy, the other thing they do wrong is they give the customers the product for free. And the problem with that is if you give somebody a product for free, they don't truly value it. So I try to get startups, if they're even running like a beta, right, even though it's a beta.
The first beta that's wonky.
You got to start charging them for it in day one.
Okay.
Right, and so one way to do that is, of course, to really get these customers bought into it, is you can go to them. So let's say it's normally going to be $2,000 a month.
Right.
Really appreciate that you're willing to do this beta for us. It's limited features. It might be some bugs, but we want to make sure customize it for your business. And we're going to take the time to get your feedback. And what we're willing to do for the first 3 months during this beta, instead of $2,000 a month, all we're going to charge you is we're going to give you a 75% discount. So it's only $500 a month. So you're telling them, we're only going to charge you $500 a month for 6 months, and we're going to launch in 3 months. So you're going to get this amazing deal that nobody else is going to get.
Right.
And 6 months from now, it's going to go up to the normal price.
Yep.
But you're getting in at this price, which is going to save you, and then you got to do the math, right? So you can say, it's going to save you $6,000 if you just sign on this today. And they go, dude, you're saving me $6,000? Of course I'm going to sign up for that. There's always ways to make it appealing. And then you get these people who are paying for it from day one, and they value the product, and they understand it's something they have to pay for. And you find out then if it's something they're willing to pay for.
Right, because if I won't pay you $500, I'm definitely not paying you $2,000.
Right.
Right? Yeah, brilliant. Any other things you would advise us, or common things you see mistakes we're making?
Oh, well, it's all surrounding ideas. If you're going to create a B2C business.
So you're going direct to the consumer.
Right. You really have to have an effective way to get the word out.
You got to get customer acquisition.
So we get a lot of applications for a really good, a really useful, worthwhile B2C business. But if you can't show me that you can effectively get the word out, if you don't have access, because you need a strategy for getting in front of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people.
Right.
And if you're not confident you can do that successfully, it's hard. It's hard to get in front of that many people,
right,
unless you have, hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend in marketing. It's really difficult. People don't realize that. And that's what you have to do if you're charging anything less than $100 a month.
Right.
If you don't have access to an audience already, right, B2C is difficult. B2B is a lot easier. It really feels like some of the most effective products we've seen go through Starter Studio have been through B2B. Why is that? Because you might only need 10 customers to become a successful business.
And it might be profitable right after your beta.
Right.
In your beta.
Right.
Right?
So it's like if you are creating a B2C product, you need to have spent almost like the previous year or two building an audience. And that's really one of the big reasons Code School was successful in the first place.
Right.
Why we didn't need to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because I'd spent the prior like 4 or 5 years before we even started Code School building an audience. I had a popular blog, I had a popular podcast, I created videos, I had a popular brand.
Right.
And I did that for the consultancy, not for Code School, for the consultancy. But because I built that audience, the moment I had something for them to pay for, I could put it out there, and people went, "Oh, Gregg puts out the best, educational tech stuff. I'm going to buy it because I know him."
So we're just overlooking the cost, customer acquisition cost on the consumer thing.
Oh yeah, it's rough. It's rough, but at the same time too, if you can work out the sales and marketing side. Sometimes you can do the B2C where it's like if you are good at SEO and AdWords, right, and maybe you're $50 a month,
right,
you know your customer's going to stick around for 5 months, maybe you can spend $100 to acquire a customer. In which case, if you know how to use AdWords properly and you have a good customer funnel, maybe you can make it work.
Yeah. So talk to me about, so you've done was it called an exit or was it just called an acquisition? What do you call the Code School thing?
Oh, it's definitely an acquisition.
Okay.
Acquisitions, it seems like they get a bad rap because most of the time a company goes to sell the business because the leadership or certain things happen and they want to, find somebody to acquire the business. Obviously, you don't build a company to exit, right? Maybe that's what happens if you're lucky.
A lot of people are talking these days, I want to build it to exit. What would you say to that?
Oh, that's awful. No, you can't do that. I think it's a recipe for failure if that's your sole goal, right? You just build a company to enjoy it, right? It's like those things. Like, do you enjoy the destination or do you enjoy getting there, right?
What do you think? Do you think that's coming because investors are asking the question, how are you going to exit? Or how is it soaked, kind of gotten into our culture that everyone's talking about, I'm building this to exit, I'm building this to exit. And
everybody wants to be rich. Right. I think there's that culture that people want to be wealthy. People want to be rich. And that's, and they envy and idolize the founders that have figured that out somehow. And so they aim to do that. And if you look at the founders that happened to, were they aiming to sell the company? No. When we were looking at potential acquisitions as an option, were we looking to cash out? That wasn't it either, right? So we ended up with a deal where we got some cash to offset the risk and equity in the new company that has great leadership, that has great potential, the future potential, so that we can still be a part of that future success and play a role in that future success.
Because you're builders. Like, if you're really an entrepreneur, you're a builder. Mm-hmm. You're trying to build and create something.
And I knew at that $5 million in revenue mark that we were lacking a lot of the executive leadership that we probably would want to get to that $50 million mark. And so we were looking around at acquirers that had that leadership, that had that experience, and had that right momentum to get us further faster
to that next place. So your why, if you were describing your why, what's behind your involvement in startup, your work? What's your why?
I have lots of different whys, I think.
Okay, what's your why behind Code School,
for Code School?
NV Labs, Starter Studio?
Well, for Code School, really, it's about creating the most effective way to learn something online. And being really innovative. And we're really innovative in the way that we do that, right? Innovation happens at the combination of disciplines. And when you look at how we create educational content, it's taking all these different disciplines, from instructional design to illustrative design to videography to technology. It's just so many different disciplines into one form, to create this masterpiece of content, to get people that say, I didn't get it, and then I took your course, and then I got it.
Yeah, especially with something like coding, right?
That feels really good to me. It also feels really good to, create a work environment where people feel safe and they love what they do. And people at Code School, we love what we do, and it doesn't feel like a job. I don't want to feel like I have a job.
Yeah. It's your life.
Yeah. I get to go in and do what I love on a subject that changes lives and affects people. What could be more gratifying than that? So, yeah.
So your advice for other people that are...
I guess I like providing. That drives me.
You like providing?
Yeah. I like to provide that work environment and provide a work atmosphere where people love what they do and they feel safe where they are and are happy.
Is that surprising to you that part is as much of energy for you as the whole making learning simple?
I'm learning this slowly but surely. It's really interesting, because I have there's that one management people side, right? And that management people side is also the same side that's like, oh my God, I'm done. I've had enough meetings for the day.
I don't want to see a humanoid again.
Right. Versus the side where it's like, oh, I want to do hard things and create. Really, the providing for people and the management is also the same side that gets tired of all the meetings. Versus the creative and the innovative side. So there's got to be a good balance. But I think both of those drive me pretty well.
I just saw Paul Graham's old article that he wrote in 2009 about makers' managers' schedule. And he talks about this whole thing that makers, when they were at Y Combinator, makers need 4-hour half-day chunks.
Oh, yeah.
And managers work on time versus events. And it's all hours. And those of us that are creators, we have to have this maker schedule, early, these big blocks of time.
Right.
And then for people, you need a different kind of schedule.
Right. And that reminds me of this thing that it's important to know, which is, it's the management versus craftsman, right? And so many developers, as they go further in the career, not just developers, creatives in general, as they go further in the career, sometimes they get pushed into management positions, and that's just not the right direction for them, right? They're in companies where the only way to move up is to be in charge of more people, which is horrible.
But they move out of their passion and their sweet spot.
Or they feel like they have to in order to, climb up the ladder, and that's bad, right? They're always in companies, and including ours, we're also really sensitive to that idea that there needs to be a craftsman path, right? So I use the word craftsman as in, it's a discipline like programming or art or, it could be human resources, right? And you're just focusing on that and getting better at that. And there needs to be a way for you to graduate from, junior to mid-level to senior to master in that craft without necessarily having more leadership or having more management.
Yeah. So for the person that's out there thinking about starting something, right? You've exited.
So those starters, right? So the people who are starters are people who are willing and are okay to try to get decent at everything, right?
First, you have to be jack of all trades, right?
That's what makes you a starter, is you have that attitude of I know I'm going to have to learn a little bit of everything. I'm not going to be good at everything, but as a starter with my product, I have to learn about sales, I have to learn about marketing, I have to learn about management, I have to listen to my people, I have to create that good work environment, all the stuff that I might not even care about, because maybe what I care about is just teaching people to learn online. But you have to take on all that responsibility and be willing to accept that fact that you have to.
Yes, for a certain season, right?
And as you grow, right, and it was really interesting what happens as a starter, where you have to be accountable for all these different things.
Right.
As you go from a 5 to 20 to 30 person company, what happens is you slowly shed each of those responsibilities.
Yeah.
And you start hiring less jack of all trades like you and more specialists.
Yep. And that is really how you grow your vision. Well, thank you for your time and your wisdom. And I just loved your passion for the people side of, because so many times we get so into talking about just the venture or just the technical part of the startup. But even in a guy that's working with programmers and development and tech, you're all about the people, right? And we all know that's why you're such a rock star. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for listening to the Dear Rockstar podcast and video. Go to pamhoelzle.com to learn more about how to start something, and subscribe on iTunes to Dear Rockstar to never miss an inspiring rock star
And
like Gregg.
Do it quick before another plane flies over.